Good afternoon and welcome to The Latest, a show where a group of young Curry College women come together to share what's happening in the Curry College community. The latest current topics. To begin, let's talk about a recent incident that's happened this week.
Michaela Flowers, a Curry College resident, was escorted off campus by Curry College Public Safety when demonstrating her frustration with years of discrimination at Curry College. Michaela has experienced discrimination as a direct victim and as a minority group member throughout her 2 years so far at Curry. Being a passionate member of the community, Michaela has tried to push for change, meeting with many Curry College administrators and organizations, for example, Diversity Coordinator and the Associate Vice President of Student Affairs, and she has attended forums and events. Ladies, do you think public safety did the right thing?
So I think that we all kind of got a different story, right? Because on the Curry College class of 2019, which is my grade, we got this long post with a picture, but I believe she told...
We got a video or something like of her like expressing her frustrations and stuff.
Well, so she told you something, right?
So Michaela Flowers actually lives in the building that I RA in, so I give out in both sides of the situation. But what I found interesting is I found out this event happened through social media. We weren't aware of it at all through residence life.
No.
I mean, of course, that's to obviously maybe protect her, privacy-wise, but as a resident assistant, I would very much appreciate to be notified if this happened. Because people come up and they ask you this, and as an RA, I want to be informed to answer the question correctly.
And it seems that they inform us about every other thing that goes on, and this was a very significant incident that happened on campus. So I think a mass email would have been appreciated on both sides.
And I know actually she's allowed back on campus now. She wasn't for a little bit. Spoke to her last night, and she told me that many versions of the story that has been put out isn't correct. And I think that Curry College should send out an email, like you said, Stacy, setting the tone straight, even though public safety probably handled it harshly. Again, we weren't there for the situation.
And it's probably been years and years of frustration leading up to this incident.
Right, so on the post it said something along the lines of her reaction to a previous incident. But reading it, I kind of got the thought that, was that the right way to approach the situation? Driving around the public safety area. Right, yeah, exactly.
Very well could be that both parties are maybe at fault. Certainly, she's definitely, she's tried, reaching out to administrators, leaders, and, you can only do so much, and I'm sure it's frustrating on her end of not feeling heard.
And I know her and many other members of the Curry College community had a major part in the student-run forum. And that was supposed to implement some change and, kind of put a fire under people to push for those changes. And after months and months after that happening, nothing has happened. I think that maybe had something to do with it.
Right. I also think that it was a little bit on both ends for the incident, because obviously she was frustrated. She wanted to take out her frustration somewhere, and public safety was the target for that. But at the same time, I heard that 4 Milton police officers were called, and that's not necessary. She's a 19-year-old girl. It's not necessary to bring 4 Milton PD here.
Right. It wasn't like she was a threat to anyone in the community. It was more just her frustration.
And actually, knowing her personally, she is one of the most polite etiquette. She speaks with etiquette. She I cannot see her needing for Milton police officers to escort her off campus. And also, she had no place to go. I'm not sure of the situation behind that, but if any of us are from out of state, where do you go? You can't go anywhere. So I don't know if that was the right call.
Right, that makes sense.
And also, in terms of what it says about public safety in relationship to the students, I think that's a horrible, horrible tone. That can't be the quick answer, is calling Milton PD. So it doesn't set the right tone, most definitely. Yeah. But moving on, the Me Too campaign has allowed sexual assault survivors to share their stories. The creator of the Me Too movement, Tarana Burke, originally created the movement to reach sexual assault survivors in underprivileged communities. The Huffington Post wrote, "The hashtag MeToo movement highlights a a common problem with feminist movements. They're often whitewashed, and when they're brought into the mainstream conversations, women of color are often overlooked and left out of the conversation. Now, women have also brought up the Time's Up movement, which is further progression from the Me Too movement. Time's Up is a call for action. This further movement was kicked off by 300 Women of Hollywood. The main goal is for women of all professions to speak up against sexual assault and harassment without the face repercussions. As Alex Landry is a Curry College feminist, and she joins us here today. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Alex, as a young woman, you've experienced an incident of sexual assault. With all the recent movements, how do you feel this is, possessing us forward?
I think it's really important that women are speaking out, and that's, on campus, around the country, around the world. And just, I've seen friends, I have heard of colleagues who they've all been affected. And that's, I think, the biggest thing with the movement is that you didn't realize how many women have been affected. And some of the statistics say that 1 in 3 women in their lifetime will experience some form of sexual harassment. And I think this movement is just so important to bring that awareness to everybody, because it's something that we need to face and something we need to deal with.
So I know you're heavily involved on campus. You were an RA, an orientation leader, you studied abroad, you've had plenty of jobs on campus. So in any of those positions, do they prepare you, your bosses or the people that oversee you, prepare you for instances of sexual assault?
Yeah, so as a resident assistant, and Lindsay can speak to this as well, we get trained on what happens when a student comes to us who they have experienced some sort of sexual assault or sexual harassment. We have to go through trainings on how to report that, and it's a very personal experience, and for someone to be willing to trust you with that, it's something that I don't take lightly if someone trusts me with that, and just making sure it goes on to the right hands and it doesn't get spread, because we tell this to all of the people, all of the victims, survivors, that it's all about you. Like, you're in the driver's seat moving forward. Like, we just want to make sure that you feel comfortable, you feel safe, and that you get the help you need.
Do you feel like after you report these incidents to the school and to your higher ups, you feel like it's carried out in the right way?
I do believe so from the experiences that I've worked with. Students all take different routes of how they want to report it. Some only report it to Curry College, some only report it to Milton PD, some do both. And if it were to happen, say, in the past, and it's something they come up to me with and they are seeking help with counseling or something like that on campus, each person is different, and their way of going about getting help and helping themselves is different for each person.
It's very also important to know that RAs and other administrators that aren't confidential, they're trained on reporting up, not out. So anything, if it's even mentioned, we have to report it. And I think as college students, an education of who is confidential, who isn't, is very important, because there's a difference if you go into the health center and you say something. It can be kept in there, but if you say something, for example, to RAs, we do have to report up. It doesn't mean it's going to the whole campus. It's very private. And I think that with the whole Me Too movement, Time's Up movement, it's really setting a tone for what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. And I think people are starting to recognize instances of maybe in the past we're like, wow, that certainly wasn't appropriate. And Alex, I don't know if you can agree with that. I know you recently had a trip abroad.
Yeah, so it was interesting. While I was abroad, I had lots of experience with people from different cultures, and something I noticed that it's kind of, I guess, universal, is that, not to be stereotypical, but guys do this in any culture, any country. So while I was abroad, I was actually approached while I was out one night, and a guy tried to grab me, and I reacted and I pushed him away, and made it known that that was not going to be okay. But it just opened my eyes that this happens around the world, and no matter where you're from, no matter who you are, if you're the president, if you're a politician, if you're an actor, it doesn't make it okay. And that's what this is all about. It's putting blame on the people who've been getting away with it for way too long.
It helps with women speaking up for each other. I love seeing that. I know from my situation, I worked at a restaurant this past summer, and I was dealing with a situation where I was grouped inappropriately, and I didn't know what to do because I felt extremely uncomfortable in that situation. But when I tell you, one of the bus girls who doesn't even speak English flew across that room, said something immediately. It sets a tone. Like, it's okay to speak up, tell your story, and I'm certainly somebody else will have a story too. So.
And it's nice to see like that unity between women to make it comfortable for people to speak up. Like, I love that you guys say that you know, report up and not report out. And that's something that I think a lot of students themselves are like concerned about, is their confidentiality and, you know, how that stuff gets portrayed out towards the public.
Right, and so when that comes to Curry, I know Alex and I, we were actually roommates freshman year, and it was like, if you're ever in an uncomfortable situation, you know, when we're in the room, it's like, that's our sign, right? That's our sign. We're like, okay, yeah, it's time to, you know, help a girl out.
Yeah.
And so any way that we can help each other, we should definitely take advantage of that.
I think it's important for all girls and even guys who can be put into these incidents is to you know, create maybe a safe code or a safe one text message or a word to, you know, help that out so you can have quick and fast reaction times to stop like more serious issues from happening.
I think men, honestly, too. I know it seems like women stick together. Men, if you see something, say something too. Yeah, you know, like men and people in general, they follow to action. So if you see something, say something, it causes a chain reaction of like, hey, that's not okay. Like, watch somebody else's drink. If you see a girl maybe across the bar and she's not really with it, and you see her put down her drink, maybe keep an eye on her for a night. Or
pretend on each incident like you're on the show. What would you do?
Yes.
Right. Yeah. And if you don't report that, everyone's gonna think you're mean.
So I think it's important for men to think about, oh, what if this was my sister or my girlfriend or my mother that this was happening to? Because that puts things into perspective. It's like, oh, I don't want that happening. And like, I think it's catching on a little bit more because, like, from my personal experience, one of my friends' families owns a restaurant, and like something happened where the waitress was like, she was being harassed, and he just kicked the guy out. He was like, no, you gotta go. We can't do this.
No tolerance.
No tolerance for it.
Exactly, and that's how it should be addressed. So.
Yeah.
And I agree with what the Huffington Post said about sometimes feminists being whitewashed into like maybe, you know, the stereotype is like men hating. No, it's not about that. I think with recent news lately of, you know, people speaking up and saying, you know, what they mean and like their stories, it's causing positive change.
But now we're also stuck with the issue of like, do we stick with the no tolerance policy or do you go with the education policy? There's no right answer.
There's no right answer.
Thank you so much, Alex, for joining us. When we come back, we will talk about the show's new movie in theaters, taking theaters by storm. Stay with us.
What would the world be like without polar bears? Rainforests are clean water. World Wildlife Fund is an organization with focuses on the global threats and the forces that impact them. The strategy for addressing these problems is to integrate three major areas: water, forests, and climate. By directing our resources to these three elements, the World Wildlife Fund has leverage in protecting vulnerable places, species, and communities worldwide. For over 50 years, World Wildlife Fund has been the world leader in protecting the future of nature. They have close to 5 million global supporters. Even major companies such as Coca-Cola supports the World Wildlife Fund. Since 2007, Coca-Cola has been aiding in conserving the world's fresh water. One way the World Wildlife Fund helps animals on the brink of extinction is by allowing you to symbolically adopt an animal. You can save the world's endangered species. Symbolically adopting animals also makes for great gifts. Another way to help the World Wildlife Fund is to become a member by visiting our website.
To the latest, Black Panther hit the theaters on February 16th and has already earned an estimated $21.7 million on Tuesday. That's the best pre-summer Tuesday take ever, beating out Beauty and the Beast. With a strong female presence throughout the movie, Letitia Wright plays the role of Shuri, Black Panther's strong and intelligent sister. This female character is unlike any princess or sidekick as she fights alongside her brother. Let's take a look at the trailer for Black Panther.
I have seen gods fly. I've seen men build weapons that I couldn't even imagine. I've seen aliens drop from the sky.
Yeah.
But I have never seen anything like this. How much more are you hiding?
Hold up. Let's go.
We are home. My son, it is your time.
Show me my respect and bow down.
You get to decide what kind of king you are going to be. Don't freeze.
I never freeze.
The revolution will not be televised. Show me my respect and bow down. We own ya. We own ya. We only getting started now. Cause we own ya. Everybody think they know me now. Cause we own ya. You and I'm a homie. Cause we own ya.
I waited my entire life for this. The world's gonna start over. I'ma burn it all. What happens now determines what happens to the rest of the world.
You will not be able to stay home, brother. You will not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out. Wakanda forever! The revolution will not be televised.
Let's have some fun.
The revolution will be live.
So I think you guys can already kind of see from the trailer, this isn't your typical, male hero comes and saves the princess kind of movie. Lindsay, I know you just recently saw it. Are there any female roles that kind of stood out to you?
Honestly, all of them. I loved the movie, and I loved how they incorporated a lot of women, especially in like the action, like warrior part. I loved how in the movie, I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but there's a lot of scenes of challenge in terms of the throne, and the women chose to protect the king, and I love it. So, yeah.
I just think that they're portrayed, they look gorgeous, obviously, their costumes look great, but they're just portrayed in a way that is so courageous, and it's representative of the woman we see every day in our lives. When is there ever a time where, you're speaking to a woman and, you think that they're, less than a man? It's not really like that anymore, and so we're finally seeing that in a film, and I love it. I absolutely love it.
I love how they incorporated, and I'm thinking of in Black Panther, how different it is from Iron Man, Thor, the Hulk, Captain America. There's lead male actor and damsel in distress type of deal. This is not like that at all. I encourage everybody to go see this movie because not only is the acting amazing, the storyline's amazing, has a very subtle messages of inclusion and diversity, and I love that. The graphics are amazing too. Soundtracks are amazing. So it's an overall amazing movie.
All of this positive feedback makes me wonder where all the backlash came from with people boycotting the movie and all of that. It includes so many different types of people and diversity that I thought it would appeal to everyone.
No, I agree, and I think this was a huge step in terms of equality.
Yep.
Having a primarily African American cast was huge. and the acting was great, and I don't really see any reason to boycott the movie at all.
I think they were boycotting it because Michael B.
Jordan
He's dating a white woman, and I think that was the uproar of the boycotting. I could be wrong, but I think that's what I read, which is ridiculous.
Well, regardless, it didn't work.
Yeah, it didn't work.
It definitely didn't work. Great at the box office, so
having that kind of mindset really just throws off the whole message of Black Panther. So
yeah,
I
think thankfully that backlash didn't overshadow the movie like it does with some other productions.
No, yeah, I agree, because I had barely heard about the boycott, to be honest. But
exactly. Yep.
So we're moving on.
After recent school shootings in Parkland, Florida, students, staff, and loved ones have been fighting in different ways to grieve the loss of 17 lives. Many students, through the dealing with the injuries and the PTSD, are standing up to fight for gun control. One young woman, Emma Gonzalez, a student at Stone Douglas High School, gave a powerful speech at an anti-gun rally on Saturday. Let's take a look.
We are going to be the kids that you read about in textbooks. Not because we are going to be another statistic about mass shootings in America, but because, just as David said, we are going to be the last mass shooting. Just like Tinker v. Des Moines, we are going to change the law. That's going to be Marjorie Stoneman Douglas in that textbook, and it's all going to be due to the tireless effort of the school board, the faculty members, the family members, and most importantly, the students. The students. And how about we stop blaming the victims for something that was the shooter's fault? People who let him buy the guns in the first place, those at the gun shows, the people who encouraged him to buy accessories for his guns to make them fully automatic, the people who didn't take them away from him when they knew that he expressed homicidal tendencies. And I am not talking about the FBI. I am talking about the people that he lived with. I'm talking about the neighbors who saw him outside holding guns. If the president wants to come up to me and tell me to my face that it was a terrible tragedy and how it should never have happened, and maintain telling us how nothing is going to be done about it, I'm going to happily ask him how much money he received from the National Rifle Association.
Wow, what strength that takes for one high school girl to come out and talk about gun control. What do you guys think about like the really controversial, topic?
Honestly, I feel awful, first of all. Like, that's really tough. I can't even imagine being in the position of her or any of the students in that school. And then on top of it, like, we need to do something. Like, nothing's happening, nothing's coming from it. Like, there's been, I think, 28 school shootings since like January 1st of this year, and no one's paying attention, no one's doing anything.
And even since then, we recently got news that in Kentucky there was another shooting, 18 injured and 2 students killed in Marshall County in Kentucky. So our prayers are out to them, and hopefully that all of this will stem some sort of change for politicians and the society in general.
I just don't get how children's safety isn't #1 priority right now.
Well,
I just don't understand it. I don't get how this is even a discussion. It should just be action, to be completely honest.
So I know New Hampshire, which is a state that has very lax gun laws, they're now putting in place where like millions and millions of dollars into schools where you can detect guns before they even come into the school facility, which is great, and I'm glad that that state can afford it and those school districts can afford it. But we have to make sure about all the other lower income schools who maybe can't afford all that technology to detect guns, but their students can still obtain them, and that's where the issue holds.
It's people want to channel it into one argument. It's gun control. It's mental illness, it's safety of schools.
It's all of those factors.
It's all three.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
all
get
of
how
those
they all don't intertwine in some way. I don't get how we don't recognize that. It's just frustrating.
On top of that, too, I think literally the day before that this happened, I saw a video online, and it was a Florida man buying a gun with an expired license, and within 2 minutes, he was allowed to buy it. Like, you can't make it that easy. There has to be more. And then on top of that, who needs an AR-15?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And there's also that argument of, people saying that a good guy with a gun stops a bad guy with a gun. I'm going to argue against it, to be honest. People putting guns in schools just makes me very, very nervous altogether.
That shouldn't even be like a thing. If we can't supply all of our teachers with, ample amount of pens and pencils and papers without teachers having to go buy their own supplies, we should not be supplying them like thousands and thousands of dollars worth of guns if we cannot supply them school supplies. You know what I mean?
Exactly that point. Exactly.
That's like not even.
And if a law was put in place where there's some kind of gun control at all, just better background checks, anything like that, that is not stopping responsible gun owners to have their guns, right? Exactly. It's just stopping people with mental illnesses or malicious intent to have guns.
In my high school, we had an armed officer around at all times, and all the kids knew our officer, OJ. She passed away like a year ago, so rest in peace. But she was around at all times. Every kid knew her. She introduced herself. I think she was an officer, not a teacher, and I think that's a huge difference.
Yeah, because she's trained.
She's trained, and I think we shouldn't put the line between teacher and gun. I think that's just...
They already have enough on their plate.
Enough on their plate. If we can't get enough funding for, laptops, technology for schools, like lunches, that's a whole different
And then
story.
aside from that, keeping a gun in the classroom is a whole separate issue. Training to use the gun in the classroom is a whole separate issue. I've personally been through the LTC course. It's 8 hours and it's rigorous. Like, our teachers need to be doing something else with that time. And then that will possibly take away from a school day.
That also brings on other issues too, though, because I've seen teachers snap as well. And that's another issue where it's like, should I be scared that my child is going to class with a teacher that has a gun? And what if that just turns into a bad situation?
Kids are curious on top of that. Kids are curious.
That's when I say those lines shouldn't be crossed. When I was in school, there's a difference between a student being afraid of being disciplined by a teacher. I think guns shouldn't be in that equation.
Yeah.
My 2 older sisters, they are licensed to carry. They went through the course too. When they went through the course, it's a long day. It's a long day. It's a lot of money.
My meeting with my sheriff.
Yep.
That meeting is supposed to be an hour. It's a process.
And depending on I don't know what state, if it's different costs or anything, it's expensive. So we definitely need to take
something that our economy has to take the time to think about.
Yeah, I agree. And you're also looking at, politicians who aren't talking about this issue, and we have this little girl here, up here, doing all the
begging, yeah.
Well, that'll do it. This is an episode of The Latest, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us.